The alarm screamed through the colony ship's corridors, and Lieutenant Kira Valen of the Xandorian Defense Fleet grabbed her plasma rifle. Her husband, Daniel Cross, stood in their quarters' doorway, his face unnervingly calm while chaos erupted outside. 3 months married, and she still didn't understand him. He never spoke about his past, never joined the other humans in their stories about Earth. He just smiled, kissed her forehead each morning, and worked quietly in the engineering bay. The raiders had breached Deck 7. Kira's communicator crackled with desperate voices as her fellow officers reported casualties. The Crethon pirates were notorious for taking prisoners and selling them to the mining guilds in the Outer Rim. They'd slaughtered the entire crew of the merchant vessel Destiny last month. "Stay here," Kira commanded, checking her weapons charge. "Lock the door. Don't open it for anyone but me." Daniel said nothing. He walked to their storage locker and pulled out a long, wrapped bundle she'd never seen before. Her people didn't use melee weapons. They were barbaric, inefficient. Every civilized species in the galaxy had evolved past such primitive tools centuries ago. "What is that?" she asked. Daniel unwrapped the cloth slowly. Beneath was a curved blade, roughly 3 feet long, with a guard and a handle wrapped in black cord. The metal gleamed under their quarters' soft lights. "Daniel, we don't have time for—" The door exploded inward. 3 Crethon warriors burst through, their scaled bodies towering over both humans. The lead pirate aimed his weapon at Kira. She raised her rifle but knew she was too slow. The neural disruptor would hit her first. Then Daniel moved. Kira had trained for 12 years in the Xandorian military. She'd seen combat veterans, Olympic athletes, even the legendary Vorthan duelists who could dodge laser fire. She'd never seen anything move like her husband moved in that moment. The blade sang from its sheath. Daniel crossed the distance to the first Crethon in less than a heartbeat. The curved steel flashed once, and the pirate's weapon clattered to the floor along with the clawed hand that had held it. The alien's roar of pain died as Daniel spun, the sword continuing its arc through the creature's throat. The second Crethon fired. Daniel wasn't where the blast went. He was already inside the alien's guard, the blade punching through scales that could deflect small arms fire. The third pirate backed toward the door, speaking frantically into his communicator in his guttural language. Daniel pulled the sword free and stood between the remaining raider and Kira. Blood dripped from the blade's edge. His breathing was steady. His hands didn't shake. "Tell your captain," Daniel said in perfect Crethon, "that humanity remembers how to fight." The pirate fled. Kira stared at the man she'd married, at the bodies on their floor, at the ancient weapon in his hands. "Who are you?" she whispered. Daniel wiped the blade on the fallen Crethon's armor and sheathed it. "Right now, I'm the man keeping you alive."
"We need to reach the bridge. The captain will need help coordinating the defense."
Kira's mind struggled to process what she'd witnessed. The colonial military databases contained extensive files on human capabilities. Humans were strong for their size, adaptable, stubborn, good engineers, decent soldiers, excellent at improvising solutions. Nobody mentioned they could move like that. Nobody mentioned they still carried swords. "That weapon shouldn't have cut through Crethon's scales," she said, following him into the corridor. Bodies littered the floor, both colonists and pirates. "Their hides are rated for Class 4 kinetic resistance." "It's folded steel," Daniel replied, checking each intersection before advancing. "Carbon content 0.7%. Differential hardening. The technique is 1,400 years old." 1,400%, Kira stopped. "Your people were making weapons like that before you had spaceflight? We were making weapons like this before we had written language in some places." Daniel moved with a fluid grace she'd never noticed before. Every step was balanced, every turn calculated. "The sword has a name, Katana. From my ancestors' homeland, a place called Japan." The ship shuddered. Something had struck the hole near the reactor core. Kira's tactical display showed 17 Crethon boarding parties scattered throughout the vessel. The crew was being overwhelmed. The colonial ship Mercy's Hope was a transport, not a warship. Most of the 2,000 passengers were civilians, families relocating to the Andromeda colonies. "Engineering first," Daniel said, changing direction. "If they take the reactor, everyone dies." They ran through twisting corridors. Twice they encountered groups of panicked colonists. Daniel directed them to the secure shelters without breaking stride. When they found a wounded security officer bleeding against a wall, he stopped. "Kira, compress the wound. I'll clear ahead." "Daniel, wait." But he was already gone, disappearing around the corner toward Engineering Bay 3. Kira heard the clash of metal on chitin, heard screaming in Crethon. heard the singing sound of that impossible blade cutting through air and flesh. By the time she'd stabilized the wounded officer and called for medical, the sounds had stopped. She found Daniel standing amid 6 dead pirates. Not a scratch on him, not even breathing hard. The katana gleamed red under the emergency lights. "Engineering is secure," he said. "Core is stable, but we have a problem." Chief Engineer Lisa Martinez emerged from behind a barricade of cargo containers. Her face was pale, her hands shaking. "Thank the ancestors you're here, Lieutenant. They were about to break through. I've never seen anyone fight like that." "What's the problem?" Kira asked Daniel, trying to maintain some semblance of military order despite the surreal nightmare her life had become. "The pirates aren't leaving," Daniel said, pointing to a tactical display. "Standard Crethon raid pattern is hit fast, grab prisoners, run before military response arrives. They're still boarding, still fighting." "That means they're not here for slaves." Kira felt ice in her stomach. "What are they here for?" "They're here for me." The words hung in the recycled air. Chief Martinez stared. Kira's world tilted again. "Explain!" Kira said, her voice sharp with command authority. Daniel met her eyes. For the first time since she'd known him, she saw something ancient there, something cold and dangerous. "Before I met you, before I came to the colonies, I was part of Earth's first contact security detail. We handled the initial negotiations with the Galactic Council, made sure humanity got a fair deal." "So, you were a diplomat?" "Not exactly." Daniel checked the corridor again. "There was an incident. A Crethon war chief named Graython tried to intimidate the human delegation, wanted to establish dominance, make us accept a subservient position in the galactic hierarchy." "What happened?" "I challenged him to single combat. Old Crethon tradition. His honor wouldn't let him refuse, even though I was physically smaller." Daniel's voice was flat, emotionless. "I killed him with this sword, in front of his entire clan, in front of the council. Humans got a better treaty. But Graython's son, Vexoth, swore a blood oath." The ship shuddered again. The lights flickered. "Vexoth leads the largest Crethon pirate fleet in this sector," Kira said, pieces clicking together. "He's been raiding colony ships for 2 years. You're telling me this entire attack is personal?" "He tracked me. I don't know how, but he found me." Daniel looked at her, and something in his expression softened. "I'm sorry, Kira. I thought I'd left this behind. Thought I could just be a normal engineer, have a normal life." "Have you?" Alarm shrieked. The tactical display showed a massive energy signature approaching the ship. Something big. Something heavily armed. "That's Vexoth's flagship," Daniel said. "The Bloodfang. He's coming aboard." "Then we evacuate," Kira decided. "Get you to an escape pod. Jump to FTL before 3,000 souls gone. He won't stop until either he kills me or I kill him." Kira wanted to argue, wanted to find another solution. But she was a soldier, and she understood tactics, understood sacrifice. Still, this was her husband. The man who made her coffee each morning, who laughed at her terrible jokes, who held her when she had nightmares about her brother's death in the border wars. "Then we fight," she said. Daniel shook his head. "You don't understand what you're saying. Vexoth is 9 feet tall. His armor is military-grade, not pirate scrap. He's killed over 100 warriors in personal combat."
"And you killed his father?"
"I got lucky. Luck doesn't move like you moved in our quarters." Kira grabbed his arm. "I've been a tactical officer for 8 years. I've studied combat footage from every major species. What you did was impossible. You didn't just beat those pirates. You made it look easy." Daniel was quiet for a moment. Around them, the ship groaned under weapons fire. People screamed in distant corridors. Chief Martinez worked frantically at her console, trying to keep the reactor stable. "My family has been training in the sword for 37 generations, Daniel finally said. "My father started teaching me when I was 5 years old. Every day, 4 hours minimum. Forms, techniques, meditation. By the time I was 20, I'd trained longer than most people work their entire careers." Kira did the math. 4 hours a day for 15 years. Over 20,000 hours. That was why he moved like that. Why the katana seemed like an extension of his body. "Earth's military recruited me when I was 22, Daniel continued, "not for my engineering degree. For this." He touched the katana's hilt. "They had a theory. Every species in the galaxy evolved past melee combat centuries ago, maybe millennia. Energy weapons, kinetic barriers, drone warfare. Nobody expects a man with a sword." "Psychological warfare," Kira said, understanding. Primitive weapon, advanced technique. It breaks their threat assessment models. Exactly, and it worked on Graphin. He laughed when I drew the katana. Right up until I cut his weapon in half. He died confused, still trying to understand how a smaller opponent with older technology had beaten him. The tactical display updated. The Bloodfang had docked at the main airlock. Vexoth was aboard. All crew, this is Captain Stevens. A voice crackled over the intercom. Fall back to defensive positions around the civilian shelters. Security teams, converge on Deck 5. We have hostile commander on board. That's suicide, Chief Martinez said. Security teams have plasma rifles. Vexo has personal shields, he'll cut through them. Daniel moved to a wall panel and started typing. Code flowed across the screen. Commands Kira didn't recognize. The engineering systems responded, rerouting power, sealing specific corridors, creating a path. What are you doing? Kira asked. Leading him away from the civilians. Away from you. Daniel finished and turned to face her. Dark eyes were calm, resolved. I'm going to the cargo bay. Wide open space, no civilians. Good place for a duel. Alone? That's how blood oaths work? One-on-one.
He won't accept interference.
Kira wanted to scream. Wanted to order him to stay. But she also understood duty, understood the weight of choices that affected thousands of lives. If Daniel fought Vexoth, maybe the rest of the pirates would withdraw. Maybe the ship would survive. I'm coming with you, she said. Not to fight. To witness. If you're going to do this, someone needs to record it for the council. Make sure Vexoth honors his oath if you win. Daniel smiled, and it was sad and gentle, in exactly the expression he wore when he kissed her goodbye each morning. But you stay behind cover. Promise me. I promise. They moved through the ship like ghosts. Daniel had rerouted the cameras, masked their signatures from sensors. Kira watched him work and realized she'd married someone far more dangerous than she'd ever imagined. He wasn't just a warrior. He was tactically brilliant, technologically sophisticated, and absolutely lethal. The cargo bay was enormous, designed to hold equipment for colony establishment. Prefab buildings, terraforming gear, agricultural machinery. Crates were stacked 20 feet high in places. Daniel walked to the center of the open floor and drew the katana. Hide, he told Kira. Record everything. She climbed behind a container and activated her tactical recorder. The bay doors exploded inward. Metal screamed. Through the smoke walked Vexoth, and Kira understood why Daniel had been afraid. The Crethon war chief was a monster. 9 feet of scaled muscle and rage, wearing armor that looked like it had survived artillery strikes. His claws were each as long as Kira's fingers, coated in some dark substance she suspected was poison. He carried a weapon that was part sword, part axe, the blade crackling with energy. Human, Vexoth roared, his voice echoing through the bay. You murdered my father. You dishonored my clan. Today the blood debt is paid. Daniel stood perfectly still. The katana was held in a guard position, point angled down, body turned sideways. He looked impossibly small compared to the alien warrior. Your father tried to enslave my species, Daniel said, his voice clear and strong. I gave him an honorable death in combat. Vexit charged. Kira had seen footage of Crethon warriors in battle. They were fast, incredibly fast for their size. Vexoth crossed 30 feet in less than 2 seconds, his energy blade arcing down with enough force to cleave a battle tank. Daniel wasn't there. He moved right, the katana flashing up in a diagonal cut that caught Vexoth's arm. The blade screamed against the armor, didn't penetrate. But it had been a test. Daniel was learning his opponent's defenses, probing for weaknesses. Vexoth spun faster than Kira would have thought possible. His blade carved through the air where Daniel had been standing. A cargo container exploded from the energy discharge, showering metal fragments across the bay. Daniel danced backward, light on his feet, breathing controlled. He was treating this like the training he'd described, like one of those 4-hour sessions that had consumed 15 years of his life. The next exchange happened too fast for Kira to follow. Vexo attacked with a combination of strikes, each one precise and powerful. Daniel blocked, parried, redirected. The katana blurred. Sparks flew as steel met energy. Neither warrior spoke. Both were focused entirely on the deadly dance. Then Daniel did something Kira didn't expect. He dropped low under a sweeping strike and rolled forward. Came up inside Vexo's guard, too close for the energy blade to be effective. The katana struck 3 times in rapid succession. Joint gaps. The armor's weak points. Vexoth roared and backhanded Daniel across the bay. The human flew 15 feet and crashed into a cargo container hard enough to dent the metal. Kira bit back a scream. Daniel should have been dead. Should have been broken. Instead, he pushed himself up, blood running from his nose, and smiled. Daniel said, his voice hoarse, "But you're slower than your father." Vexaw's eyes narrowed. He was breathing hard now, favoring his left leg where one of Daniel's strikes had penetrated. The psychological game had begun. Daniel wasn't just fighting. He was getting inside his opponent's head. The Crethon charged again, but this time he was angry. Rage made him sloppy. Daniel exploited it, staying just out of reach, forcing Vexoff to overextend. Each attack left openings. Each opening drew blood. Small cuts, precise strikes, targeting the spots where armor plates met. Death by 1,000 cuts, Kira thought. Daniel was faster, more agile, more patient. He was wearing down a warrior twice his size through pure technique. But Vexoff was no fool. He'd survived 100 duels. He recognized the strategy and adjusted. Instead of wild charges, he became methodical.
Used his longer reach, used his strength.
One solid hit would end the fight, and both warriors knew it. They circled each other. The cargo bay had become a battlefield, littered with debris from their clashes. Fires burned in places where the energy blade had struck. The ship's automated systems were spraying suppressant foam, creating a mist that hung in the air. Through the mist, Daniel moved like a ghost. Kira lost sight of him several times, only to see him reappear at a different angle, the katana striking and vanishing. Vexoth was bleeding from a dozen wounds now. None fatal, but he was slowing. His armor was scarred and cracked. "You fight well, human," Vexoth admitted, his voice strained. "Better than your father." "I don't have children," Daniel replied, circling. "No." "But you have a mate." Kira's blood froze. Vexoth's eyes flicked toward her hiding spot. He knew. Had known all along. "The blood oath requires your death," Vexoth continued. "But it also requires you to understand loss, to feel what I felt when you took my father." Daniel's expression changed. The calm, collected warrior vanished. Something primal took his place. "You will not touch her." "I won't have to." Vexoth raised his free hand. In it was a detonator. "My ship is currently locked onto this vessel's reactor core. When my heart stops, the dead man's switch engages. Everyone dies. Your mate. 3,000 innocents. All because you couldn't let me have my revenge. It was the perfect trap." Kira saw it immediately. If Daniel killed Vexoth, the ship exploded. If Daniel surrendered, Vexoth would kill him and probably destroy the ship anyway. There was no winning scenario. "Clever," Daniel said. His voice was flat again, emotion controlled. "But you've made a mistake." "What mistake?" "You assumed I was alone." The cargo bay doors opened. Through them walked Captain Stevens and 50 security officers, weapons raised. Behind them came Chief Martinez with a dozen engineering specialists. But that wasn't what made Vexoth's expression change to confusion and then fear. Behind the humans came others. Xandorians, Vorthans, Kalathi, even 3 Ethel who'd been passengers on the ship. Dozens of species, hundreds of individuals, all armed with whatever they could find. Pipes, tools, emergency equipment. Not soldiers, but people who'd decided to fight. "You attacked civilians under my protection," Daniel said, advancing. "You threatened my wife. You thought this was about honor, about blood oaths. You were wrong. This is about humanity. About what happens when you push us too far." Vexoth looked around at the assembled crowd. His crew was scattered throughout the ship, fighting isolated battles. He was alone. The detonator in his hand suddenly seemed less like a trump card and more like a desperate bluff. "You won't gamble with their lives." Daniel was close now, almost within striking distance. "You're right, I won't. That's why Chief Martinez has been hacking your ship systems for the last 5 minutes. The signal to the dead man's switch? Blocked. The targeting computer? Rerouted. Your flagship is currently aiming at empty space." It was a lie. Kira could see it in the slight tension in Daniel's shoulders, the way his weight shifted. Martinez hadn't had time to hack anything, but Vexoth didn't know that. He hesitated, looked at the detonator, looked at the crowd. That moment of uncertainty was all Daniel needed. The katana moved faster than thought. It struck the detonator, splitting it in half before Vexoth could press the trigger. Continued upward, catching the Crethon's energy blade and redirecting it. Came back down in an arc that was both beautiful and terrible. Vexoth's armor cracked. The blade found flesh. The war chief stumbled, dropped to one knee. Daniel stood over him, katana point pressed against the gap in the neck armor. "Yield!" Daniel commanded. For a long moment, nobody moved. The cargo bay was silent except for the crackle of fires and the hiss of suppressant foam. Vexoff looked up at the human who'd bested him, at the crowd of aliens who'd come to his defense, at the impossible situation he'd created for himself. "I yield," Vexoff said, and there was something like respect in his voice. "The blood oath is satisfied. You have proven yourself the better warrior." Daniel lowered the katana but didn't sheath it. "Your crew will withdraw. You will leave this system and never return. Any Crethan who attacks human ships or their allies will answer to me personally." "Are these terms acceptable?" "They are acceptable." Captain Stevens stepped forward. "Security will escort you to your ship. If you deviate from the agreed departure trajectory, we will fire on you."
Vexoff rose slowly, painfully. He looked at Daniel one last time.
"Your father would have been proud." "I wouldn't know," Daniel replied. "He died before he could teach me everything." The Krathon warriors withdrew under heavy guard. Their wounded were treated by ship's medical staff, a gesture that seemed to confuse them. Mercy's Hope had sustained heavy damage, but the reactor held. The casualties were far fewer than they should have been, thanks to Daniel's early intervention. Kira watched her husband as the crowd dispersed. He stood alone in the center of the cargo bay, katana finally sheathed, looking more exhausted than she'd ever seen him. Not physically, something deeper. He'd been carrying the weight of his past, hiding who he was, and now everything was exposed. She walked to him, didn't speak, just stood beside him until he was ready to talk. I'm sorry," Daniel said eventually. "I should have told you, before we married, before we fell in love. You deserve to know who you were binding your life to." "A man who saved 3,000 people today," Kira replied. "A man who risked everything to protect strangers. That's who you are. I'm a killer. I've taken 17 lives in personal combat, hundreds more in military operations. The sword isn't just tradition or art. It's what I was made for." Kira took his hand. It was calloused, scarred in ways she'd never really looked at before. "My brother died in the border wars. Did I ever tell you how?" Daniel shook his head. "He was a medic, ran into enemy fire to save a wounded soldier. Doing this," Kira's voice was steady, but her eyes were wet. "Everyone said he was a hero. But I was angry for years. Angry that he'd thrown his life away. Angry that he'd left me alone." "How did you stop being angry?" "I realized he didn't throw his life away. He spent it on something that mattered. On someone who needed him." She squeezed his hand. "You spent your life today. For me. For everyone on this ship. That's not something to apologize for." The ship's intercom crackled. "Lieutenant Valen, Daniel Cross, please report to the bridge." They walked together through corridors being repaired by damage control teams. People stopped them constantly. Thank Daniel. Some wanted to shake his hand. Others just wanted to see the man who'd fought a Krathon war chief and won. Daniel was polite but uncomfortable with the attention. Captain Stevens waited on the bridge with the senior staff. The view screen showed Vexoth's fleet departing, their drives leaving trails of light as they jumped to FTL. No pursuit. The battle was over. "Mr. Cross," Captain Stevens began, "I've been reviewing the security footage. What you did today was remarkable. More than that, it was necessary. We'd all be dead without your intervention." "I was just protecting your ship," the captain finished. "Yes. And in doing so, you've created a significant diplomatic situation. The Galactic Council will want answers. Earth's government will want answers. The question is what story we tell them." Daniel straightened. "Tell them the truth. A human defended his home against pirates. Nothing more complicated than that. The truth is you're a weapon," Chief Martinez said, not unkindly. "A classified Earth military asset who killed a Krathon war chief 5 years ago and sparked an interstellar incident. A man who's been hiding in the colonies under a false name. My name is Daniel Cross," he replied firmly. "It's been my name for 3 years. The person I was before, that's classified. Dead. Gone." Captain Stevens nodded slowly. "As far as this ship's records show, Daniel Cross is a civilian engineer who displayed remarkable courage during the pirate attack. His previous military service is noted but unspecified. That's my official report." "Sir, the Council will investigate," the tactical officer warned. "Let them. Earth's government won't contradict my report. They need colonists like Mr. Cross, people who can defend the frontier. Starting an inquisition would be counterproductive." Kira felt something loosen in her chest. Daniel wouldn't be arrested, wouldn't be recalled to active duty. He could stay. There is one complication, Captain Stevens continued. Your actions today have made you famous. The footage is already spreading through colonial networks. By tomorrow, every human settlement in the sector will know your name. Know what you did. Daniel closed his eyes. Privacy, anonymity, the quiet life he'd wanted, all gone. Good, Kira said, surprising everyone, including herself. Let them know. Let the pirates know. Let the Crethan clans know. Let anyone thinking about attacking human colonies know that we don't just have energy weapons and starships. We have Daniel Cross. We have warriors who've trained for generations. We have people who will fight with ancient weapons and modern courage. Captain Stevens smiled. Well said, Lieutenant. Mr. Cross, you're dismissed. Get some rest. We'll be dealing with the aftermath for days. They returned to their quarters. The bodies had been removed, but the scorch marks remained. The bloodstains would need professional cleaning. It didn't matter. Kira had faced the reality of what her husband was, what he could do, and she wasn't afraid. I need to clean the blade, Daniel said, unwrapping the katana carefully. Blood corrodes steel if left too long. Kira watched him work. The ritual was meditative, precise. He used a special cloth, a particular oil. Check the edge for damage. It was beautiful in a deadly way. Will you teach me? She asked. Daniel looked up, surprised. The sword, everything. The forms, the techniques. If being married to you means being a target, I want to be able to defend myself. Defend us. He was quiet for a long moment. Then he smiled, and it was the smile she'd fallen in love with. It takes years to master. Decades. Then we'd better start now. 2 months later, Daniel Cross was officially appointed as Mercy's Hope security consultant. The colony they'd been heading toward welcomed them with celebration. The local defense force requested training from the man who'd defeated Vexoth. Other humans hearing the story began practicing with antique weapons, rediscovering techniques their ancestors had perfected centuries ago. Kira stood in the training hall they'd built, wooden sword in hand, learning the first basic form. It was harder than she'd expected. Her muscles ached. Her technique was terrible. But Daniel was patient, correcting her stance, showing her the proper grip. Again, he said. She repeated the movement. Better this time. Not good, but better. Outside, the colony thrived. New buildings rose daily. Fields were planted. Children played in streets lined with alien trees. And somewhere in the distance, ships patrolled the system borders, watching for threats. But if threats came, they would find something unexpected. They would find humanity hadn't forgotten how to fight, had carried their warrior traditions across the stars, had married their ancient ways to their new technologies. They would find Daniel Cross, and they would find thousands like him awakening to what their species had always been beneath the civilization and the diplomacy. They would find that humanity had brought their swords to the stars.
And they knew exactly how to use them.